Hi, Andrea.
Hi.
Lovely to see you.
Great to see you as well.
Welcome to this space. I mean, this is like, I feel like obviously I want to introduce who you are. Actually, let me introduce who you are and then we could talk about how we met, because this is just, I feel like we have to bring that into the room. But who are you today?
Today, I am a proud queer woman, and I'm a performer, producer, and the co-founder of Ring of Keys.
Yes, you are.
Which we'll probably talk more about later.
Fairly certain most of this episode will probably revolve somewhere around that. Yeah, we met. Okay, I mean, like, we were singing the same voice part, standing next to each other,
sharing a binder.
Sharing a binder, correct. At a benefit concert. And then we didn't realize while we were there that we both were like meaning to reach out to the other person.
Yeah.
And then it was like, wait, here we are.
I literally had the Empowered Artist Collective tab like up on my Google Chrome. Like on my
I had Ring of Keys literally up for a long time, like on my to-do list.
And I had like watched episodes on YouTube and seen your face and your name, and still I think I was like getting over a virus or starting a virus. I was just like not myself that night. And I was like, I think that I will excuse it for that reason. But
honestly, we're living, and we're like living in weird times where like, not only does time mean nothing, but also just like the continuum kind of is just I don't like it, just none of it really makes sense to me, at least. And I feel like I'll speak kind of on behalf of many people, that it's just like, I feel like the barometer of excusing strange interactions and behavior has gone higher for me, where I'm just like, it is.
Yeah, it kind of is our new norm of like this post-pandemic world where we're just living in extreme circumstances of like, we haven't seen each other. We've been in isolation.
Yeah.
How do we do this human thing again?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. But like, we're apparently supposed to just like remember. I feel like it's happened. Like, we're meant to just be back on this hamster wheel. Yeah. And I'm like, I don't want to be a hamster anymore. Like, I want to be a guinea pig or a bunny, I think. Like, I don't need
I think I still want to be the hamster, and I like try to be, and I'm like, I can't, it's not actually possible anymore. Like, I want to keep going. And then I'm like, I actually can't do what I used to be able to do.
Yeah. I think I can, for better or for worse, I feel like I can. And then I'm like, but then I like slow my literal roll on the hamster wheel. And I was like, but I learned over the pandemic, and don't be dumb and forget that you learned you didn't want to be here. Get off the wheel. Get off the wheel. Really trying. We can talk about hamsters the whole time, and it'd be a very different podcast episode. I want to hear the origin story / who you are in artist land to lead up towards Ring of Keys, and for anybody who's listening, what that is, so that we can lead up to that.
Yeah. I have been singing, and since before I could read. I started very young and decided at 11 years old that I was going to do musical theater for the rest of my life. And I was a pretty intense child. I was like, at 13, like, Mom, I need piano lessons because I need to be more marketable.
The word marketable was like part of your amazing. Yes. We live. Great.
So like, that's kind of, I'm giving you my origin story, which will like help segue into the Ring of Keys origin story, which in a way, Ring of Keys was birthed from me. So it's one and the same. Yeah. So I studied musical theater in college and lived in Chicago for 8 years and worked in that community for, I think, 8 years before moving to New York. I was closeted throughout college, and I didn't come out until I graduated. I mean, I graduated in 2004. So that also gives you like kind of the lens of the landscape at the time. I was a soprano ingenue and did not have any role models that were queer at all. So yeah, I was really, really terrified of being both a lesbian and a soprano. I was like, those worlds are siloed. They cannot coexist.
Did you feel that way because you didn't have representation for the ways they could coexist? Or was it more that like you felt from external pressure in some way that like one would negate the other?
Yeah, I think both. I think because there was no representation, it didn't seem possible. It also felt like career suicide to come out and not be taken seriously as the like young love interest.
Yeah.
Which is a lot of like internalized homophobia, really. So I mean, it's funny, I have short hair now, but I just in college was like, well, you know, we're kind of wrestling with my sexuality and trying to figure it out. And remember walking around campus saying to myself, like, oh, okay, I'm not gay. Yeah, I'm not gay. Phew. Because like, I don't want to cut my hair short like Ellen DeGeneres. So I'm not gay. Like that was like my understanding of what a gay woman looked like. Wow. It was one type, right? We didn't have any femme representation, let alone all the other kind of, you know, the ranges of identities that fall under the queer spectrum. And so, so I worked professionally in Chicago for 8 years, built up in like a big body of work and got to do a lot of great things there. And was just like, I went through a breakup and was like, I'm ready for New York. Like I want to be on Broadway. I need to get there. I want to do this. My final show in Chicago before moving was Gypsy. And I played Louise, and the woman who played my Mama Rose is now my wife.
Oh, plot twist.
Plot twist. It's a good meet cute.
Wait, can we talk? Do you mind sharing that?
Yes. It's our favorite like way to start the story of how we met.
Oh my God, I'm obsessed. So mother and daughter just off in the wings, and people are like, don't ask, don't tell.
It just sounds that way. Yeah, it sounds like we make it sound more like salacious than it actually was. But I mean, we met doing that show. And we, when I met her dog Sprout at the time, who was 4 months old, became our Chowsy. And due to like just some weird dressing room arrangements, myself and her and the dog shared a dressing room. And like our family story like started unknowingly in that dressing room, which is crazy. So we became like really good friends. And one of like I was like very talent crushing on her because she was just this like, I mean, she is a fucking force. She's legendary. Clea Blackhurst. I'm name dropping.
Please name. Yes.
I met her and I was like, oh my God, another lesbian woman that is an actress. Like I had worked in Chicago for 8 years and never worked with another lesbian actress.
That's really wild.
Like known, I should say.
At this point in your journey, were you out?
Yes. Sorry. Okay. So I came out like right after college.
Okay.
To everyone. Yeah. But except I wasn't as like out and such a queer advocate as I am now. But I was like, I was out. It was a little more uncomfortable. There were certain spaces I didn't discuss it, or like, I don't remember telling my Chicago agent, like, I'm gay and these are the roles I want to be seen for. But although there weren't like gay roles then. So, I mean, I was definitely out, and it just was something I kind of still kept on the shelf.
Okay.
Anyway, it was my last show. I was excited to be moving to New York, and she lived there. She was like a New York person who did the show in Chicago. And I was just like, we have to stay in touch. Oh my God, this is so cool. So yeah, I mean, like a year later, we started dating. Year and a half. I can't remember the timeline, but like, she was with someone else at the time during Gypsy, and they ended up breaking up. And we just became like really, really, really good friends, and then like crossed the friend line, and it was like, oh my God, this is happening. So yeah,
I love this so much. This is such a cute meet cute.
Oh my God, we just got married this past June.
Oh my God, mazel tov.
Thank you.
Yeah. Wait. Ugh, I'm obsessed. Wait, how long were you dating then?
8 years. That's
wow.
A common number, I guess. Yeah.
Wow.
8 years, and like the processional of our wedding started with dun 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 da 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 da.
Oh,
I produced an entire like concert ceremony.
I'm obsessed with this whole thing. So wait, that's such a good story. I hope you're writing this for something that is of TV.
TV, that's a good idea.
Yeah, or a movie.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Let's do it. Anyone listening can.
Yeah. We've had many people on these episodes prior who either produce film, write film, do the thing. We've had many an episode, so feel free to go back in that catalog and browse.
Okay,
but
we'll do.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Amazing. So you're married, all that thing, all the things. But at this point, I guess Ring of Keys came prior to
So
so
I moved to New York in 2012. End of 2012. Yeah. So I'm first couple of years in New York, I, was just kind of making my way and figuring it out and everything. But I mean, I remember coming out to my agent, my New York agent in like 2015. Like that gives you kind of a scope of how much things have changed and how quickly they have changed.
Yeah.
Because I met my Ring of Keys co-founder, Roy Bacchus, in 2017 or 18. And she had the same experience that I had meeting Cleo, which was like, oh my God, another lesbian actress. Oh my God, this is like so impactful. I've never met someone like me. This is like, we need to be friends. And we didn't fall in love. Don't worry. Like that's not part of the story, but we just decided to like, we did like make a baby though. So there's that. We launched Ring of Keys in 2018, and we had basically decided that because the impact of our friendship meant so much to us, we felt like, where is our community? Like at that point, and still continues. I mean, we knew that this industry is dominated by gay men. And I always say, like, we love our gay men, like we love them, but we felt like we needed our own space. Like it was such an old gay boys club. And like, where was the space for the rest of us in the queer spectrum? I like to say that musical theater is gay, but not queer. And
what do you mean by that?
It's just the very idea that it serves a lot of gay men. It serves a specific kind of community. It wasn't serving like a more inclusive, larger spectrum community. And when I mean serving, I mean like providing opportunities, hiring, telling the stories of people beyond cis gay men.
Yeah.
And, I think what's important to remember too in the scope of our queer history is these are the gay men that we lost so many of them in the AIDS crisis. And so I don't want to negate the work that they've done, or have never wanted to negate like the progress that we've made. It was like, it's a kind of a yes and response to what exists.
Yeah.
We were like, let's make a space, and it's going to be a monthly potluck, and we're going to meet, and we're going to rally the friends we already know that are a part of this spectrum, this affinity space. We're going to make it, we're going to build it. And then she left to go do OSF for the season. So she was gone from like February to August or something. And very quickly, the organization started to grow, and it started to grow nationally. And it grew based on word of mouth. And when I say it grew, it started as a collective in my actual living room here of like people gathering and just deciding that, okay, we're going to have these like monthly meetups. And we had a website, and the website, I should say, I don't know, because we haven't said what Ring of Keys actually is.
I was literally going to stop you after that. But I feel like because it was like the origin leading up to it, I was like, maybe we'll organically get there. But like, we could just talk about
how it exists now in the current mission statement. I mean, it's currently a 501c3 nonprofit, and it's an artist service organization that fosters community and visibility for queer women, trans, and non-binary artists working in musical theater. So what it started as is a collective for that very same group, queer women, trans, and non-binary artists. I formalized it into being a nonprofit during the pandemic. But our main resource, you could say, was this directory. That was kind of the big brainchild of what we could do beyond these monthly potlucks. Was it should serve as a resource for casting and hiring, in that I think so often as queer people, like, especially if you're like not visibly queer to some, you want this, like, you almost want to be wearing this shirt that says like, I'm queer, cast me in the queer role. Right. So the website was this hiring resource, all the profiles of Ring of Keys members. You opt in, you sign up, you're a part of the community through this directory. And it started just as like a Squarespace website. And then it just like grew exponentially, and people were telling friends, and it was growing through word of mouth. And suddenly we had like all of these applications, you could say, of people wanting to be added to this directory. And it was a lot of sort of like admin labor. And Royer very quickly was like, I I don't know if this is for me. I don't really do the admin thing. Like, I don't even know how to really do Gmail. I mean, like, don't get me wrong. She's a brilliant individual. She went to Northwestern.
Those things are not, they are not
mutually
correlated. Not at all.
Yeah. And so she was like, I don't know, I think. And I was like, at the same time, I was having the reverse response of like, oh my God, I want to grow this thing. I want to make it a nonprofit. Like, let's do all the things. And so I very quickly kind of took the helm with her permission to kind of continue to grow it and evolve it. And she was sort of like my co-pilot who was like in the bathroom, you know.
Love. We need them.
Yes. Like, she was like, I got you, but I'm not going to like do the work. And like in the way of like, she was helping where she could, but like, anyway. So yeah, it just kind of started as a thing that
this was officially like the website part started what year?
We launched January 15th, 2018.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. And then
maybe 5 years, actually.
It's amazing. So you became a nonprofit.
Formalized. Yeah.
In 2020.
Yeah. That was like my pandemic project. It was hard. It was
Why
really hard.
Did you decide to do that? For funding's sake or
financial sustainability? Yes. Okay. It became clear that we were growing, and I was like hurdling the responsibility of like 600 artists on my shoulders. So my mental health was suffering because I felt very responsible for, and this is my own like therapy shit, right? Like I felt like, oh my God, responsible for like these artists being amplified. And I was taking it on so much emotionally, but I also felt like all of this was unpaid too. It was a volunteer endeavor. And so I was like, I'm going to burn out. So for my own sake, for the future of the organization, it felt necessary to grow to be a 501c3 so we could apply for grants, so we could have individual contributions. You know, we were fiscally, what's it called?
Sponsored.
Fiscally sponsored. Yeah. Through Fractured Atlas for 2 years before that.
Okay.
So yeah, that was like the stepping stone to nonprofit world. Yeah. And so I also then about a year later made the decision that I actually was going to pass the torch and no longer lead the organization. And that was a very, very, very difficult decision. But
what drove you to that?
Yeah, there were a number of factors. What I'll share is that it was mental health, really, primarily, and taking care of myself. And it was consuming me in like the best of ways and the worst of ways. And I needed to take care of myself, and I needed to take care of my own career, which I'd put on the back burner to be in service to my community. And I felt like I could very well just dissolve the whole thing, but it was serving a lot of people. And I thought like the harder, but more like noble choice would be to like pass it and like have a whole search and find a new leader for the organization. And that wonderful person is Alison, who is Chicago based and associate producer at Chicago Shakespeare Theatre, as well as now the executive director, which is the title I gave myself as the founder when I formalized. It's so funny to like create something from scratch because you're like just making it up. You're like, what do you call the person that is running a nonprofit? Oh, okay. I guess I'm executive director now. You know what I mean?
I do. I very much do. Here I am.
So weird. You know, and it just grew really fast. And people, when there was criticism, it was really tough because it's just me on the other end. And it's just me like sitting in my bedroom. But I like my wife would say that all the time. She's like, do they know that it's just like you volunteering your time out of the goodness of your heart because you just really believe in, you know, like representation and community. And like, it's just like, it's just one person. It's just one person doing all this. So just got like to be a lot.
I really appreciate you being so open and vulnerable about that. I think if anybody were to listen to any of the earlier episodes about mental health, I think here, at least in the Empowered Artists Collective spaces, we're really trying to like destigmatize the conversations at minimum about it, where it's just so many of us artists at various points in our lives go through the ups and downs and the possible extremes of what those feel like, depending on who you are, where you are, what you are. And for better or for worse, we don't talk about it. Whereas it actually is in some ways a unifier because most of us experience a version of it at some point. And like it would, if anything, enhance community to be more open to support one another in these ways. So thank you for sharing so openly. Yeah.
And thank you for saying that because I still stigmatize it. Like it's very hard for me to be vulnerable about mental health. I'm older. Like I'm not a 20 something who grew up in an environment that I think that is different than the one I grew up in, where you can talk about therapy. You can talk about having anxiety. Like those are things that, you know, I didn't even realize I had anxiety until like I couldn't name it until I was like in my late 20s.
Yeah.
Because we just didn't talk about those things.
Mhm.
I'm 40 now. So it's, you know, it's just a different environment. So it still feels very uncomfortable.
Yeah. So I appreciate you doing that. Even if you were more like seasoned or whatever that is about like talking about it, it still is something that's personal and vulnerable. And I think it takes, I don't know, I would argue a better leadership to recognize when that actually is what makes a leader, in my opinion, is somebody who is like, my capacity is at this. And because I believe in this so much, that is why somebody else has to. Like, what better leadership would that be to be able to delegate something instead of taking it on? And then for all of the other reasons, then it falls apart. It's not even noble. It's actually what leadership is, I would argue.
Yeah. I think we've had a lot of warped understanding of leadership in our society since Trump. I think there's kids growing up that are like, you think about our current Gen Z 22-year-old voters, like they were 16 when Trump was elected. And so there's a real like kind of distrust of leadership, I feel, in our society. And we've watched it happen within our own theater community. And so I have a lot of compassion for leaders right now and leadership, because not everyone is an awful scumbag like Trump, but it kind of, we all get kind of put under that category. Yeah. And I think, I have a lot of compassion for people leading in the theater industry during the last couple of years, because it's been fucking hard and challenging.
Still is. Still is. And I imagine it will continue to be for a period of time. You know, you're playing catch up in addition to trying to make progress. It's like you're simultaneously trying to do two things at once. Beautiful. So you co-founded this organization and it expanded beyond your wildest belief. So what is it doing now, or what is the purpose that it's serving now? And how have you found the reception has been, say, on the other side of the table, which I guess is who initially you were using this as like a resource for them? How has that been?
Really good questions. Let me see if I can unpack all of those. I think one of the things that running a nonprofit that you learn is that kind of trying to find the data on how on impact can be really challenging. But what I know is the personal stories of people and the ways in which the organization has helped them. While it might seem kind of elusive or hard to kind of pinpoint, what the organization is doing is creating all of these rings, literally, of networks of people meeting. There are people that have their entire queer friendship group that they met through Ring of Keys. There are people that have new collaborators because they met through this organization. There's a couple that are married that met through Ring of Keys.
Oh my God.
So it's creating this community. It's doing exactly what I had hoped it would do, which was to provide an opportunity to network with our people. And that's what's happening internally. And then externally, what happens is...
Pausing you for a moment. Internally, are you still having said like potlucks? Are you having...
Right. Thank you. No. So because we grew so quickly nationally that we spent a lot less time like on the individual city meetups, which we were having for a bit and starting to grow momentum on like individual city meetups. And then the pandemic happened. And then we put all of our focus towards virtual programming. And in the first month of the pandemic, we increased our programming to 800% from like 8 workshops that we offered that first month. And really, they were just tangible skill set things like financial toolkit and yoga for mental health. And we even did like a crafting one. So they were really more like unrelated to being queer in musical theater. I mean, we also did like panels and, you know, a casting director showcase, but it was
about building community. It was about having people meet each other.
Yeah, exactly. We did like a songwriting matchmaking, which was really fun too. So all of that has, you know, I think as the pandemic, you know, carried on and people got a little Zoom fatigued, I think we kind of lessened our Zoom virtual programming, but we've continued to offer them sporadically as far as like building that community. The directory continues to be our main resource, and casting directors, all kinds of theater industry folk are using that as a resource to find queer artists
Amazing.
for queer roles, or queer artists for any role. And the other component of, or like umbrella in the organization, as far as what we're doing to like help foster that visibility, is the Queering the Canon concert series, which is something I created and launched in 2020, right before the pandemic. And
we love those moments. We love the
right
before moments. Mm-hmm. Yep. Those fill up with like a full feeling of like, we know
we're going
like
somewhere. We're going somewhere.
Oh,
we
God,
don't know that it's going to end.
Mm-hmm. I feel like anytime anybody mentions, I started this right before the pandemic, I have a visceral response to what that is. Like my body is still like, I know that feeling.
Yeah. However, in this instance, yes, I totally like 100% agree with that. Like, yes.
Great. If this one's a great positive ending.
This one, yeah. I mean, because it was always just going to be a one night only benefit concert. And the next one probably wouldn't have happened till 21 anyway. But we did this concert, and it actually was this great launching pad towards a whole series. So it started as a one concert. What it is concerts that showcase all Ring of Keys members. It started as the one benefit concert and then grew into being 3 concert series. And the series itself, each evening featured a different songwriter. So it was Queering the Canon, Sondheim, Queering the Canon, Candor and Ebb, and Andrew Lloyd Webber. On those evenings, the songs were queered by the nature of the casting. So all Sondheim songs queered through the performers themselves, and the response songs to those Sondheim songs, for instance, were new songs written by Ring of Keys songwriters. And it was really, really fun in concert, in action, to see the way all of the songwriters took the assignment. And the way they would write against or in response to. One example is like Maria from West Side Story. That song was sung by a Black queer woman, Ashley Blanchett. And the response song was called Emma. And it was written by key member Joanna Burns. And it had like the same melodic yearning as Maria, but it was about meeting this woman meeting another woman, Emma, in a Starbucks. And it's like a comedic song sung by Ariella Sorer. So it was a really fun night, and because so often from a producing standpoint, it can be hard to do a whole night of like new works to get those evenings to sell. But what was great about this conceit is that we actually, people loved it. Like they were like so excited to see what the new song was going to be. And that is our new canon. That is the future. We sold out Joe's Pub 2 of the 3 nights. This concert series that ended up just happening this past January, February, and March of 2022. It was like my final swan song before I stopped leading the organization. It was like the height of Omicron.
Yeah. That was truly the
and like we still like managed to do it, and nobody and I had 94 artists involved in this series.
Wow.
And not one had to like drop out because of COVID. I don't know how we made that work.
The gods of whatever were like, this must be. This must be.
I think like, patience is a virtue, because we had to delay that series twice. It was supposed to happen in 21. We got grant funding for it, and we had to push it all the way to this winter because of the pandemic. So I was like, I don't know. It ended up being just like this beautiful showcase of visibility. And so that's kind of, I think, examples of how the organization is making an impact and how it's serving the community. Yeah. I'm really proud of the work.
You should be.
Yeah, thanks.
I mean, obviously you're no longer at the official helm of it, but I guess what is the ideal vision long term in terms of, and I don't like impact because again, it's not necessarily tangible, but like, what is it? It's just that the community continues to grow and continues to support itself, and that people, each other, and then other people know that it exists and then continue to use it as a resource, and it just continues moving in that capacity. Is it that I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I built a 5-year strategic plan for the organization, at this point, it's not really my responsibility or role to see that through because it's no longer being, I'm no longer leading it. I think the vision for me would be for it to have respect within our community of like taken seriously, and the artists themselves are respected and not marginalized, and, you know, at the center of all productions across the country, really. I know that's a big dream, but I think we can dream that.
Yeah, I think if you don't have the dream, then you have nothing you're moving towards, right? Like it's different if you're, you know, clouded about the fact that like there are many steps to get to that. You know, if you're just like, it's gonna happen tomorrow, I think that's I'd be like
12 hours.
Yeah, I'd be like, but let's like recalibrate a little. But like I think to have that, you know, as something that you're working towards, then there are many, many, many steps and paths that one can take to get there.
Yeah, for sure.
You know,
I think it will always serve as a community for people in a network. And that's, you know, I continue to be like, what's the word, benefactor of all of these relationships, because I so closely and intimately got to know the work of all of these artists so that I could know how best to amplify everyone in the organization. Yeah. So I'm like, I literally know dozens and hundreds of people because of this.
Yeah. Well, I guess this is like a two-folded moment. One is if somebody does identify under that umbrella, like what are the steps for them if they wanted to get involved? Let's start there.
Sure. Yeah. ringofkeys.org. You would go on the website and there's an apply button, and it's a 5-minute application, really kind of just submitting your resume, headshot. We have a vetting process just to kind of like weed out haters. We're not going to like people opt in, they self-identify. We're not, you know, we're not policing anyone's identity. But we have like requirement of like 1 professional credit. So it's not for the youths unless they have, although we have yet to have anyone under 18. And I think it's probably going to remain that way. So yeah, and that's kind of it. And then you become a Ring of Keys member and you're part of the community, you're part of the fold.
If you are not somebody who identifies under that umbrella, what are the ways in which you can support and or get involved and or be a part of the community as an ally or as a whatever? How is that?
Thank you for asking that question. I think you can subscribe to our newsletter through our website. You can attend our concerts. You can donate, which is always helpful to keep the lights on. And, you know, there's ringofkeys.org donate button on there, like any nonprofit. We are strapped for resources. We are tiny but mighty. I think our current industry and certainly the future that I think many of us are trying to build is there's an obvious need for this and there's a calling for it. But I think, you know, the future demands inclusivity. It's asking for it. And I think at this point in the game, I think most people in our industry right now like believe that. I would think they understand it, they get it. We're all on the same page of like, we need inclusivity. It's important.
I would argue that
not everyone.
That I think, and this is maybe me being a realist, as I'd like to self-identify, is that on the surface, I think everybody genuinely does want inclusivity. I think where it gets messy is at A, whose expense, and B, what does inclusivity mean? Like, who are we being inclusive of, and at what point, and can we do it all simultaneously? And, you know?
That's the other part I was going to say of that thought, is that I think we have all different ways of how we get there and what that looks like. And that's where it gets hard and messy and complicated, and a lot of conflict over how we get there and who, like you said, at whose expense. And it is easy for people to just say like, I believe in inclusion. I know that that's important. Yeah. I see a lot of people saying it that are not acting on it. And I see a lot of a lot of performativity, especially on social media, because our industry loves to perform on there.
Well, we are a bunch of performers, so yes.
You know, on top of the stage, we also perform there. And I see a lot of people, like it's trending. You know, it's like it's trending. This is what we're talking about now. It's like, do you actually are you actually doing the work? Do you care? It's okay if you're not like able to do the work. If you're not in a position to be able to like a powerful position to be able to like make change or
well, I guess that is, I mean, are you cool to unpack that with me or even attempt to just talk about that? Because I think that these are the larger questions that I have. I don't have answers to them, but just like, what is it to do the work of this type of inclusion, right? Like, obviously Ring of Keys exists, and that is a step in the right direction of like, now you have access to people that you might have otherwise been like, well, I don't know where to find them. Well, you have them here. Like now you can't pretend that you don't know, because there's literally a resource that many of whom are on, right? So that like, you can't pretend that that doesn't exist. So now that you have that, then it becomes like, well, what do you do with that? Or how do, you know, and I guess we're not going to solve this in any capacity here, but I think it's important to at least, like, if you're game, to just bring it into this space for a second of like, in your mind's eye, what are some ways that people can quote unquote do that work purposefully?
When you say people, let's start there.
Like, let's break it down. Let's start with producers.
Well, that's the easy one. I mean, they have all the control.
Yeah.
So
I'm starting easy. I'm not going to be like, hey.
So when you're looking at your budget and you're figuring out, I think a budget is a moral document. So we're starting there. Like, you need to be able to, if you care about inclusivity and you care about really, I think, broadening the landscape, then like the choices that you make and where you're spending money has to be reflected.
Great. I love that.
There.
Do you know Chie Morita?
Yeah. Oh my God. Chie helps Ring of Keys so much.
I was going to say, because Chie
says it's a moral document.
That's it. I was like, I know that phrase because
she said it. I will quote her. Yeah.
Yep. Chie's episode, tune on in, many an episode back. Yep. I was like, I know that phrase. It has to be from Chie. There's no other way. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Beautiful. Okay. What about casting directors?
Using your resources. I mean, I think I've seen a lot of amazing growth through breakdowns, for an example. But
for anybody listening, breakdowns are like when people are listing their specific casting breakdown of the roles that they're looking for, the ways in which they can communicate the breakdown, the aesthetic, the look, the type, all of these words that we hate that have to do with marketing and branding, but basically how they can label that according to casting needs for filling their parts. Cool.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of growth when it comes to breakdowns as to how roles are described. And by that, I mean, we see not just female identifying or woman, man, we see any gender or historically played by women, and we'll see all genders for this role. Just the expanding our understanding of gender and expanding our thinking of what's possible. Casting directors educating themselves on what it means to think outside of that box that we're normally associating the role with is the work for them to challenge themselves to think outside of who can play Cinderella in Into the Woods. Because in Queering the Canon, we had a non-binary actor named Avery who sang this shit on the steps of the palace. And there's no reason in my mind that Avery can't play that role and in a production of Into the Woods. It's a little more challenging as when we start to break it down now into like key signatures and voice parts, and that's where it starts to get complicated for sure. And that's money. And time is money.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean we don't continue to keep pushing the envelope on that.
Yeah. What about, and I mean, there's some, we can talk about directors, we can talk about choreography, we can talk about fellow actors, but I want to, I guess, veer from, we're starting to hear, fellow listener, that there are ways to think about it in a way that is outside of oneself. But I guess then let's say somebody has decided to be more inclusive. How does one hold that space in the room for the newness that perhaps hasn't been present in that same way?
How does one hold space for the newness?
Yeah. I guess I bring that up just because so many artists, and this is a conversation around not just, queerness as a form of inclusivity. We're talking about many other labels. I mean, we can go down the whole list of what needs to be held in these spaces, but for the sake of this conversation, if you are bringing somebody into the space who identifies in a way that is not on the cis spectrum, how does one hold that space if one is newer to this type of inclusion?
I think the conversation is not one-sided. I think that all people in the room are part of that conversation. And I don't subscribe to the idea of like, you should be Googling my identity. Like you should already know everything about it. It's not my job to educate you. I don't subscribe to that. I think the newness and the way in which we can approach all of it is like listening and slowing down and compassion on both sides. Yeah. I think change is hard. I think it's slow. Yeah. There's going to be like 2 steps back before there's 1 step forward. Yeah. There's going to be backlash. But just like looking at the incremental growth in the last 5 years to me is very heartening and very exciting. I think, we all have very different ideas of how to get there. Like I said, I feel that my pedagogy is like using positive action for positive change. And that's not necessarily an ethos that everyone likes to subscribe to. I think a lot of people want to take things more aggressively and more fast-paced, and like change now, change yesterday. And like, I feel that in my core, but I think there's a certain, I think my life experience is such that I did feel like when I was 22, I wanted to burn it all down. And I've learned through experience that like it wasn't successful. And I think like figuring out how to work within the framework to make those changes is the way I like to work. And again, not everyone agrees with that. Yeah. But that was sort of the ethos that I used to build Ring of Keys, and it continues to be the organization's ethos. So with there being sort of conflict even on how to create inclusion, even within our own queer communities, then like if we're not even on the same page, how then can we even expect cis people or cis hetero people to sort of understand? Yeah. I guess what I'm saying is I just take a more gentler approach maybe. And I just think to get to like this summary of your question, it's like, it's new, and we're gonna hold hands, and we're gonna be okay. We're gonna be okay. We're gonna like work through this.
Yeah. Well, I think, and I didn't mean to like push it and think that like, again, we were going to like solve it. I think it's more, just A, you're in the space with me and I'm curious to hear your personal opinion about it. Yeah. But B, like, I think a lot of it it's messy, and I think it's kind of going back to like when you shared so openly about, like the desire to step away and like leadership. Like, I think it's all of us recognizing that we're humans, and if obviously intention and impact, they hold weight, and sometimes we mess up and sometimes we fumble, but at least we've tried. And if we can acknowledge that the effort is really there, and then like also from Chie, like, oops, ouch, like if you can say like, there was a bruise here and I can own that I did that. And here is me trying again to do better next time. I think, that is how, if we look back on any form of change that has happened in history, a lot of people messed up a lot, but they kept trying over and over and over again until they got it more right each time.
Yeah. Movement building is tough, hard work. And it's full of people making mistakes because it's all human centered. It's all about humans. I've made a shit ton of mistakes with Ring of Keys. I own those mistakes. I think, but like, I would never want to have never started it. It's like, that's doing the work. Doing the work means making mistakes. And I think any of us trying toward a world of inclusivity, utopia is like, the effort in and of itself is, to me, what should really be highlighted, and like less on so much of what we're not doing when it comes to those doing the work. I have a lot more to say about the people that aren't doing any work at all. But if you're out there doing it, you know.
Yeah, I think we all have a lot of feelings and thoughts about that pile over there, the motion over there. If anybody looked into the YouTube, you saw that there's a hand that extends to the side.
It's the black hole.
Just the black hole. As we begin to wind down our time, if you think back to earlier parts of your artistic journey or lessons that you have now learned as you've been doing this for a lot longer, are there things that you wish you knew earlier or things that you would have told an earlier version of yourself that you now know that you would love to share with a listener?
Oh my gosh, so many things. I just think for the young artist listeners, like really trusting those instincts, because we're so often told to doubt ourselves. And the psychology of being an artist is wacky. The fact that we don't have any kind of security and the way that that kind of affects our psychosis, like it is kind of unreal, and it's unnatural, and we're sort of this square in a circular world, and we're kind of always at odds with the way the rest of the world is operating, which is okay to be different and not subscribe to the rest of the world is working, but it does make things way more challenging. When I think about that, just like health insurance, right? Like the way we have to get our health insurance, the way that we are so underpaid, and that's, I just mean like the arts in general, societally. This country does not care and doesn't value the arts. I think that was made all the more evident during the pandemic. We kind of knew it in our hearts, but it was like, oh yeah, it's real. They don't, we don't care. So I think as far as like what I wish I knew when I was younger, I just wish I listened to myself more and understand, like, and really kind of, I had a lot of good ideas and I didn't always trust myself. I didn't have the confidence, and I didn't value myself. And I see a lot of young artists who are growing up in a different climate than I grew up in. And so I think that they have a lot of confidence, in fact. But for anyone out there that's listening that doesn't have that, I recommend listening to that voice inside you that's, you know, like shutting up the doubt and kind of really believing in yourself.
Yeah.
And like do the thing that you think is not that you don't have. Like everyone always that starts something, they always say like, I didn't know what I was doing. Like I still don't know what I'm doing. So it's just like, just make the thing, because just start, jump off, leap. Because I just surely didn't know what I was doing when I started and didn't know how to make a nonprofit, and I did it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Thank you for being here and for going on this journey with me. For anybody who wants to follow along on your journey as an artist and or more information about Ring of Keys or any of those things that you potentially want to share, what are the best ways within your own boundaries that people can reach out and communicate with you?
Yeah. My website is AndreaPrestinario.com. You can also find me on Instagram. My full name at Andrea Prestinario on Instagram. Ring of Keys. If you want to talk to me about Ring of Keys, I'm at Andrea@ringofkeys.org. You can also apply to be a key through ringofkeys.org, or you can subscribe to our newsletter through there or donate.
I love that. Is there anything on your heart before we depart? That's a cute little rhyme, Jen. Oh my God, have I not done that before? Okay, alliteration. Hello.
I'm just a big fan, and I cannot get over that.
Same. I don't know either, but we're here now. We're here now. This is the beginning.
Thanks for having me.
This has been fun.
It's been fun.
Same.